The managing director of the International Finance Corporation, IFC, Maktar Diop, said in his entire professional career, he has never seen this current level of global disruption. His comments were made during his address to the Africa Financial Summit in Morocco. Agboje Ike Imokwede, the chairman of
major uncertainties. A number of challenges we have never encountered before. In my professional career, I have never experienced this level of uncertainty.
To the next story, Agboje Ike Imokwede, the chairman of Access Holdings and the Coronation Group, has likened the illiquid flow of capital in Africa to a clogged plumbing system and says the issue isn't with the pipes, but with the plumbers. His remarks came during a panel session at the Africa Financial Summit in Casablanca.
In this discussion, and maybe probably I should set the context. So reports say that Africa has potentially about $4 trillion in African institutions, African households, available for investment. African GDP, as we know, 2.5 trillion, and maybe because of the informal sector, probably larger. I'm firmly of the belief that the market is able to absorb everything that we have today. And perhaps even if after that there is a gap, okay, I don't think the gap is that wide. So clearly the issue is an issue of flow of capital. The capital is available, but it's not being channeled into the opportunities that exist in Africa. So there's a problem with our plumbing. When there's a problem with the plumbing, right, don't look at the pipes. Let's look at the plumbers. They're in this room. Who are the plumbers? The leaders in the public sector, the leaders of the financial institutions. What we're not spending enough time on is the plumbers, the mindset of the plumbers.
Still on the theme of raising capital in Africa, Chukwuemeka Achum, the founder and chief executive officer of private aviation firm Falcon Aerospace, said raising money in Nigeria is difficult because of high interest rates and African banks don't understand asset financing. He spoke with our Rise Business Correspondent Rotus Oddiri in Casablanca.
We've more or less been debt-focused, right? And in the last, 1 year, it's been a difficult market, especially in Nigeria, with interest rates, holding at 32%, right? We had raised about 4.5 billion locally from one of the financial institutions in Nigeria. But the main problem here is, African banks don't really understand asset financing, which is, one of our key financing structures for us in the aviation space. Even though that space is opening up right now, but traditionally, what we've seen is shorter amortization, high interest rates, chances of repayment are almost zero,
Speaking more on the high cost of debt in Nigeria, Chukwuemeka Achum says his company, VivaJet, a subsidiary of Falcon Aerospace Limited, uses as much as 21% of its revenue to service its debt. The firm recently raised $10 million from UK-based TLG Capital, and he spoke about the stark difference in raising funding from overseas and locally.
It was tough, but it was also interesting because even though we came out of it with a better balance sheet, we also emerged out of that process as a better organization, right? What that did for us in clear financial terms, brought down our interest expense easily by half, increased our amortization, because at some point we were even using as much as 21% of our revenues to service our debt. But, with the lending from TLG, that, freed up free cash flow for us. And, it essentially gives us more appetite to risk, makes the balance sheet look much better, right? And this is what we're talking about here. TLG from day one, even if they've never done business in aviation before. They were very keen to understand the business. Of course, we also had to be very transparent with them, and that gave them a lot of comfort. And, we were able to crystallize that deal, I believe, in 5 months, start to finish.
Arise Business Correspondent Rotus Oddiri now joins us live from Casablanca. Good morning, Rotus. Well, what has been the reaction to
Good morning, Dr. Bati.
Yeah. What has been the reaction to Mr. Aige Mokoele's plumbing analogy in Casablanca, saying the problem is with whether pipes or plumbers and all of that? Now, what is the reaction? How was the speech received?
Yeah, well, Dr. Bati is out. I would love to hear your reaction. I mean, it's created a debate here. If you believe it's leadership, and he did call out leadership of banks, right? And if you believe banks are a conduit of finance, then are they not part of the pipes, since, that's where the capital would flow? It's an interesting analogy. So, and if that's the case, then why can't banks in Nigeria just reduce interest rates and their rates for loans? To flow. Well, they can't, because of the structural issues in Nigeria. A lack of electricity, cost of doing business, the lack of collateral for its SME that wants to get funding, a business that needs to have a history of operations, that has never picked up its business, that needs a loan, needs that same loan to show what, it's a catch-22. It needs that same loan to get that business in order to show a history. So these are structural issues. And so if you're on the side of the debate that believes it's a structural issue, then structural would mean it's actually the pipes rather than the plumbers. So it's been an interesting debate here since his comments came in yesterday.
All right, excellent. Maybe we will have that debate offline as well on the plumbing analogy. But let me ask Rotus very quickly. A forum in Africa is discussing raising domestic capital, yet a Nigerian business just announced raising capital from the UK. We saw Mr. Achum there. What is the obvious takeaway?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious takeaway is that borrowing in the West is much cheaper than here. Look, in fact, Viva Jets, they're right here. Their booth is right next to this media booth here. And in fact, there's you can't see it, but I think what does it say? It says, let's make Africa's financial voice heard, right? And Africa's financial voice is stifled right now because borrowing costs are just incredibly high. And it's a bit... Is it ironic that since we're talking about it, maybe it just illustrates the issue, and that is that we need to unlock capital for a business to be here, advertising their services, and yet they're having to raise capital from overseas. And as you heard in that clip, the amortization period is longer. You have a longer period of time to pay back the loan, plus your borrowing rates are lower. So it's just part of the conversation, ongoing conversation here, and how to unlock capital in Africa for businesses.
The truth is, Rotus, there's no capital in Africa, pure and simple. What are you unlocking? Can you unlock something that doesn't exist? The entire African continent with over 1 billion population.
It's for
GDP of all the countries, when you put them together, barely 3-4 trillion. When you look at that with some small company called NVIDIA in America, can you compare? So there's no capital. Let's not, you can't unlock what you don't have. And secondly, the person that is talking about...
You're a businessman now. You've raised capital in Africa.
The person that is talking about the plumber and the, relationship, the truth is, even when the banks have the right to rent to real economy, they do not lend to real economy because the real economy is quite risky because of the structures in the country. So they will not lend to the real economy. They will rather lend to government. And that's why government will crowd out capital. So it's a big problem. And it's not in 1 or 2 conferences we're going to hear all of this. We'll keep talking about it. We've been talking about it while the African CEO Forum together. This is what we talked about 4 years ago. We'll still keep talking about it. The agenda today, as the last day in Casablanca, tell me about it.
The agenda is I'm going home to sleep.
I like that.
They're going to be talking about... the West Africa Development Bank has a session on financial pathways for energy and agriculture. So still the same financing issue. The alliance, Rufai, what will you do now? What will we do? We need to unlock the capital. And then the Alliance for Africa Entrepreneurship
SMEs, funding SMEs. So look, Rufai, everything, funding, green bonds, sukuk, funding. That's what we're talking about today.
Okay. Okay, Rotus, hopefully you take time out to do some tourism, visit the Hassan II Mosque, visit some coastal sites, and do some shopping, okay? Anyway, good to have you.
And he changes his hairstyle.
He's always liked Moroccan women. He likes Arab women.
How do you know about that?
I don't know about that.
Rotus, am I lying?
The last time Rotus came back from Morocco, he had a new hairstyle, so I'm looking forward to that.
He likes Arab women. He told me, he said he likes Arab
I don't know
women.
about that.
We're in Saudi together. He told me.
Let him settle down properly first.